You know, people ask me all the time, why do you do this? Why do you not retire and read books and write fancy academic papers? And I say, yes, that is also important. But what is more important is that I was given an opportunity to read books in the first place, to engage with ideas because of the sacrifices of ordinary. And so part of scholarship must be given back to the people in the form of public engagement. I see myself as a public scholar, what we call an activist scholar or a scholar activist, who's always trying to use the knowledge that is gained from reading books, from observing people in their communities, in their society, and giving them back, in the words of a UC Guyana, giving them back to the people as a political nourishment and by extension, cultural nourishment. That's what I'm about. It's about being that public scholar whose work is not just confined to the classroom, but that classroom is extended to the public space.
One race from the same place that make the same trip on the same ship. So we must push one common intention. It's for a better life in the region, for the woman and we children. That must be the ambition of the Caribbean and the Caribbean and the Caribbean.
And a very good evening to you in the background there, the voice of Leroy Calise, the Black Stallion, the Caribbean Man, 1979 classic, The Caribbean Man by Black Stallion, introducing our new podcast, which aired on Tuesday. Today's Wednesday. Yes, it would have aired yesterday. On Tuesday at 6:30, we'll try to do that podcast at least 3 times per week, Tuesday, Thursday, and on Sunday. And the reception to the first podcast was overwhelming. Of course, we discussed the subject of the local government election and the challenge for the opposition. Good evening. And welcome to Politics 101. If you are just joining us, well, we are on. Good evening to you if you're coming to us from Guyana. If you're coming to us from Guyana, good evening. Good evening. If you are in the wider Caribbean, good evening, good evening. And if you are in Europe, good night, good night. And in North America, good evening. If you are on the west coast of the United States, good afternoon. How are you doing? Those of you who are joining us from Suriname, French Guyana, welcome to Politics 101. It's always good to be here in the evenings to continue to do our work, to speak truth, to dirty power, as Brother Sherrod would say, dirty power, to speak truth to untruth, to speak justice to injustice, and to speak power for those who are misusing power. Welcome to Politics 101. Tonight, we are going to have 2 guests on. One of them is already here, Mr. Lelon Saul, and we are expecting Mr. Lincoln Lewis, who has not been on for a little while. We are expecting Mr. Lincoln Lewis. He's not here yet. As you know, Lincoln is a veteran trade unionist, and along with Lelon, they're spearheading a new organization, the Institute Against Discrimination. And my God, we need more organizations. I always would remember Stokely Carmichael, who, when I was a college student 20 odd years ago, 30 years ago, 30 odd years ago now, and he would come to either Howard University or the University of the District of Columbia, he would always end his speech, organize, 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 join something, form something, some organization. And my own mentor, EUC Guyana, oh my goodness, I was trying to count the number of organizations that he formed in his time, both locally in Buxton and nationally. There is an importance to organize ourselves into groups, whether it's 3 or 4 of us, or 5 of us, as they curse the WPA and say we are a 5-man party. Well, if we are a 5-man party, it's 5 people who are organizing themselves to make an impact on national politics and to put obstacles in the way of oppression. Organize yourself. And so I want to commend the Institute Against Discrimination, and they are going to be on here tonight. It's the day after the nomination, after nomination day, Monday, I think it was nomination day. Today's Wednesday, two days after nomination day, and we saw the spectacle on nomination day. But it's not the kind of spectacle that we should take lightly. Because, as I always say on this program and wherever I get a chance to speak, one must go beyond the text and go to the subtext. What is the PPP driving at? The PPP is trying to divide African Guyanese, to destabilize the African Guyanese community, to pit father against son, mother against daughter. And why are they trying to destabilize African Guyanese and the African Guyanese community? Because the African Guyanese community stands in between the PPP and its objective of restructuring and recreating a Guyana that is so unequal that some citizens would have a different status from other citizens. If the PPP were to be allowed to continue to do what they're doing unchecked, unchallenged, we would not be able to recognize Guyana in another 15, 20 years. And who stands in between them? African Guyanese. And that is why they're trying to do all kinds of things to the African Guyanese community. They brutalize today. Tomorrow, they buy out. The next day, they mock. The other day, they throw little bones at us. The next day, they pretend that we don't exist. They criminalize our leaders. And so, therefore, the African Guyanese community must organize itself at every twist and turn and at every level. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101. I would like to thank all of you who have kept faith with us and have stayed with us, and you have contributed towards slowing down, if you will, this march towards domination on the part of the PPP. Tonight, we are going to talk about some of the issues. IPADG continues to come under the assault of this government. The Umbrella African Guyanese Organization continues to come under assault. The PPP dares to take monies that were passed by the National Assembly, assented to by the president, earmarked for small projects in the African Guyanese community. They have decided that they're going to take that money and they're going to throw it like fine rice. Some of you are too young to remember fine rice. We used to buy fine rice to feed the fowls and the ducks and turkeys, and we used to cook dog food with it. It was the broken rice, and they sold it when I was a child, and we used it to feed animals for the most part. And they're throwing fine rice at us. So instead of giving IPADG, they formally and legally constituted organization, they are going to African Guyanese and throwing little tidbits at us. And what they're saying is that it's so easy to buy an African. It's all easy. And you know, I've made the point that whatever you say about Indian Guyanese, the PPP, they're not going to Indian Guyanese community and throw little trinkets at them. They dare not do it to Indian Guyanese. Indian Guyanese would not take that from the PPP or the PNC. Would not take that from the PPP or the PNC. But they feel they can throw trinkets at Black people and Amerindian people. And it's part of the inherent value gap. They value Indian dignity, and they would not assault Indian dignity. As we said, they won't take the I-pass Indian people, neither the PPP nor the PNC. But they feel that African dignity is not worth the same. So you can assault African dignity. You can have a parade and you push the microphone in front of every African to get them to prattle like ornaments. They dare not do that to Indians. You all hear me? They dare not do that to India. Indian people won't take it. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101. Lincoln Lewis is not here yet. Anybody sees him, please tell him. We are waiting on him. He has been threatening to come on this program for the last 2 months, and he's never in place. I don't know what you all have done to him. But one of our guests is here. Let's start with him. Good evening, Brother Lelon.
Good evening, Dr. Hines. Good evening, listeners. It's a pleasure to be here, always.
Yes. The Institute Against Discrimination, you all have held, I think, 3 fora, one in West Berbice, one in Golden Grove, and this past weekend, you had one at the Critchfield Labor College, paying special attention to the vendors. Bring us up to date as to what you're hearing, what you're seeing as you go through the coast, holding these this first set of forums.
Okay, Doctor. It is the Institute for Action Against Discrimination.
There you go.
We had 3 meetings. We commenced in West Berbice. We were at Golden Grove, and last week we were at Critchlow Labor College, and we were dealing with issues pertaining to vending in Georgetown. During this engagement, we have gathered substantial evidence to confirm that people are discriminated against in Guyana for various reasons, and not only racial discrimination, because Indian people also are confronted with discrimination. We know that government policies and their actions are discriminatory, and the practices of government. We have seen the way how the government go about allocating developmental benefits, subsidies, etc. And so we are committed to bring these things to the fore, and so that we can address them collectively. We believe that once we identify these issues, we will come up with the appropriate strategy to address these issues. In some cases, we will have to go to the court to seek redress. Um, but once we call out the government, I am hoping that the government will do the right thing, and they would amend their ways and treat all citizens fairly. This country belongs to all of us. We have enough resources, and we believe that we all should be treated equally. And in terms of the allocation of resources, we believe that it should be based on, there should be equitable distribution of those resources. And even as the government implement programs, they must ensure that the greatest benefit is derived by the greatest number of persons, and you just don't go about implementing program that will just benefit a few in the society. And even as I speak to the issue of discrimination, I just want to, as I said to the people at Victoria, following the visit of the delegation there, I asked them to do an assessment of what are the things that were delivered, or what promises were fulfilled by the government 6 months from now, and they will see there will be nothing substantial. I make the point in relation to Belgium. They went there and we asked them to clear the back dam, and that was in October, I think. Not even a black seed was removed from the back dam. Secondly, we have some issues with land. Back El Dorado and Belgium, the government has not addressed that issue until now. And that is the way they treat certain section of the society. They don't value you. And so this whole effort to weaken you and to reduce you to the lowest rung in society. And I think it's a deliberate attempt, because they don't want the communities, or some communities, to be prosperous and sustainable. And so what they do, they come to these communities and they identify a few people and they give them handouts. And then they will say, look, we are doing things for people. We are an inclusive government and so on. But we will not be deceived by that. If you're coming into our community, we ask that whatever project is being implemented, there must be consultation and there must be buy-in. Do not come into our communities and impose projects or program upon us. There must be that buy-in. Because the people in a particular community, they will know what is the best for them and how they can make their community viable and sustainable. It's not about just giving a few people handouts. And you know what? Sorry to say, And sometimes they look for the most vulnerable people in society who do not understand the issue, and they target them. And you see that. And even as we look at what happened at nomination day, it's tantamount to vote buying, which is dangerous for if we want to build a stable democracy. We should not encourage vote buying. I don't know, it must be a coincidence that several persons who turn out there and some of the candidates, they presently have contracts with the government. They're beneficiary in terms of the government public procurement program. Must be a coincidence. And I know of cases where people were paid money, right, to attend that nomination. And and in other cases too, persons were coerced, especially those temporary workers. This is not good for our country, and we have to fight against such thing. As I said, vote buying is dangerous. Vote buying cannot guarantee a stable democracy. It's tantamount to corruption, and we should not do that. And even as we look at that, maybe the time has come for us to look at campaign financing in Guyana. We must do that. We cannot allow this situation to continue. Here you have a government that has a lot of access to resources, to monies, and they're using state money to buy votes, to entice people, and so on. But I want people to understand that will not guarantee victory for the PPP. It cannot, because those who are affected by the policies of the PPP, and I think the average Guyanese is affected, and I trust that they will vote accordingly and reject the PPP, because we cannot continue this way. And I want to make a quick point on epadagy.
But we'll come to epadagy. We'll come to epadagy,
Okay.
Lelon. I want to continue that discussion on vote buying. You can't buy votes if votes are not there to be bought. And the fact of the matter is that the people who are being bought are African Guyanese. That's one. We don't see the PPP, the PNC being able to buy Indian Guyanese. There must be something else other than the government targeting Black people to buy them. There must be something that is happening in the Black community that makes it. Now, they're poor Indians. They're poor Indians, but you don't see the PNC able to go and buy poor Indians, even when they were in government. So there must be something that we are not putting our finger on beyond the crassness of the PPP. Yes, the PPP is crass, and they are buying votes, but it says something about the PPP, but doesn't it say something about Black people, the Black community? Let me hear you.
Yes, it says something about the Black community, and perhaps we need to look at the whole political socialization of people within the Black community. I believe that we have to raise the level of consciousness. And if you, for those who can be bought, I think it's a terrible thing. I don't want to judge them too harshly, because what I want to say here, certainly I would not say, but we need to raise our people level of consciousness. I really cannot understand why someone would lend their support to an oppressive regime, and they're willing to go with that regime. They're willing to sell themselves for a small amount of money. And you know what? Today they receive $10,000 and they don't know when the next 10,000 will come. Or a guy get a contract to clean a drain for maybe $1.2 million. He does not know when he will get a next contract to clean a next drain.
Yeah, yeah.
And what,
Leland, let me press you because you raise the issue of consciousness and you moved on. But I happen to believe that that is the core issue in the Black community. It's conscious. No, you got poor Indians, you got poor Amerindians, but you don't see them prostrating themselves before oppression like Black people are doing now. When the PNC was in power, you didn't see Indians behaving in this terrible way. Of course, the PNC tried to recruit Indians. Nothing is wrong in recruiting people from the other ethnic group. But when you see people prostrating like that, it then speaks to the level of consciousness in that community. And I want, and Lincoln is here. I'm going to bring him in because I want to ask this question too. What do you all think are the obstacles to developing the level of consciousness that is needed in the Black community to withstand the rampage of the PPP? Now, here is a regime with money. Here is a regime that has said we were in office but not in power, and now we will be in office and in power. Here is a regime shamelessly walking into our communities, taking away their sports ground as they're doing at Linden, mowing down their houses. Here is a regime that is doing these things, and you have some Black people are going over to this regime. What are the obstacles that are the obstacles to the consciousness that is needed in the Black community to prevent or to decrease that urge to allow themselves to be enslaved? You'll get the first crack at it, and then I'm bringing in Lincoln now.
yes, Doc, I think the major obstacle that we have is because our communities are not viable economically. And so we need to make our community sustainable. And so our people don't have to run across to the oppressor. I think that we have, in some of our communities, we have some of the major factors of production. We only need to put them into productive use. And we have to see how we can mobilize resources and make our community sustainable, and so that our people can have some hope right within the community there, and they don't have to run to the oppressor, because it's worrying. I saw, even in my community, there was a small bunch of people that were parading with the PPP, and I know them, and I can tell you, they are no way better off. And I don't know why they're doing it. You know, I just don't understand. As a matter of fact, I know one of them, he does not even own a kerosene stove. And he was whining in front of the car as they parade down the road for a nomination day in Belgium. There was about 14 of them, you know. I mean, they have a right to join any political movement.
I think the economic argument is not a bad argument, but I think it's more than that. Lincoln, do you think the fact that we, over the years, have failed to talk to Black people as Black people, because we fear that if we talk to Black people as Black people, that we would be labeled racist like you and me and others, and so we fail to talk to our people in their cultural language? People don't get consciousness if you don't speak to them in their cultural language. And we have substituted the Guyanese culture, whatever that is, for African culture. And so we have not developed a language, a cultural language to speak to Black people. I am arguing, and that has contributed greatly to the lack of consciousness that we need in times like this? Lincoln Lewis.
Thank you, David, for inviting me. Let me say to you that you started to try to answer the question. We have a serious problem in the African community. Many of the middle-class African man in this country and woman, they will tell you they're not an African. They're Guyanese. That's one of our problems. We have a sense of we have a sense where we lack an understanding of identity. And you made a point earlier. The ordinary African man believes that you must not talk, if you talk about racial identity, you are being racist. I always believe, as I said, racial identity can mean, being racial don't mean that you're racist. And we have bought into the stereotype over the years, which says that if you talk about race, or you identify your race, or you promote your race in a positive way, you are being racist. I always argue this point that being racist is when one race unnecessarily go and attack another race. That is being racist and trying to discriminate against that race. But racial identity do not mean that you are racist. And our community buy into that notion that you can, if you talk about, you should ought not to talk about race. When every other community seek to identify. It's a question of lack of education in our communities. And we need to understand that the time has come that we have to talk to people straight up. What's the position? In the other communities, you have that. You have that behavior among leaders. You have the Chinese Association, they talk about what they want to talk about. You have the East Indian organizations, they talk about what they want to talk about. But the moment that we mobilize, even our own people, you may say something, and our own people may come after you for saying it. They will condemn you. We're quick to distance ourselves from it, from when our leaders make statements. Somebody called them and they're ready to distance. If we rally around our brothers and sisters in getting the message across, we bring about a greater consciousness in the community. It's a question of consciousness, lack of consciousness in the community, in the African community, that caused these people to be doing this. Let me tell you what, bro. I have taken a very clear position. And there are times people may say that, who I discuss it with, may say that I'm hard on myself. Before I work with the PPP, even if I don't have bread to eat, I will never work with them. Because if I work with them, I know the beast I'm dealing with. I'm empowering them not to deal with, not to destroy me, but to use me to destroy somebody else and destroy generations to come. You know? And look, I watched at the evil one the other day on nomination day. I'm talking about the butcher from Unity. You know? This is a man who under his reign as president of this country, so many young men were killed extrajudicially were murdered through extrajudicial means, and we seem to forget it. We have a standard, we have a questioning, we have a standard in our society where we are quick to forgive other people, but we're not prepared to forgive our own leaders. The leaders that come from our community. We don't do it. We forget the rest. And I believe that there's a sense of weakness. And that weakness come about because of a lack of consciousness.
Lincoln,
between leaders.
I'm glad you have expanded on the question of consciousness. And I want to say a couple of things before I pass it on to Lelon. It's in times like these when your back is against the wall economically, when your back is against the wall politically, that you need consciousness. If our foreparents didn't have consciousness, during slavery, they would have never gotten out of slavery. In fact, oppression ought to breed consciousness. And I think you hit the nail on the head. We are naked right now. And we are naked because we have stopped walking on two legs. The political leg and the cultural leg. I have always said the period between 1964 and 1971, when you had African Guyanese leaders, one on the political realm, Forbes Burnham, and the other one on the cultural leg, Iyusi Kwayana, it was the best time for Black people economically. You go back to West Bobis, where the two of you are from. Go to the East Coast, go to the West Coast, and see how many people, Black people, started small businesses, pig rearing, poultry rearing, and a whole set of things during that period, because we were walking on two legs. There was the cultural leg, and there was the political leg. And sometimes they met, sometimes they were apart. I grew up as a little boy hearing the name Frederick Mahaika, this Black man who was rich. And I'm saying that we are now walking only on the political leg. We have dropped our culture. And so therefore we have dropped our consciousness. And it's showing now. When we look around for something to hold on to, there's no culture to hold on to. And so I think that is something we have to correct here and now. Lelon, I am putting this to our audience. Those people who, I'm not talking about PPP members, people who've been in the PPP 20, 30 years. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about these recent soup drinkers. That we have to have them pay for what they're doing. They're not just going over to the PPP to help themselves. They're in trying to drink the soup. They are killing the morale and the spirit of our people. They're delivering them. They're slave catchers. The term that Jack Dio don't like, I'm going to use it. They're Black slave catchers. And we in the Black community must not make it easy for them to do what they're doing. We must make them uncomfortable. We must make them pay a price. If they come in the bar where you're drinking, turn your back on them. Do not socialize with them. Make them pay a price. I'm not talking, I made it very clear. I'm not talking about harming anybody. I'm not talking about chasing people like Jack Dio. I'm saying in a dignified way, ostracize them because they are are, by their individual action, they are repelling the advance of the collective. Lelon, Saul, what do you think about that?
I totally support what you're saying. We must work firstly to raise the level of consciousness among our people. I believe in that. It's something that I've always advocated. And in terms of us dealing with those who are collaborating with the oppressor, we have to deal with them condignly. And I will support what you were saying. We have to ostracize them, so that they will get the message. And hopefully they will amend their ways. It is terrible that we have, and I have said this, this is one of the most racist governments we have seen since 1953. And I do not understand why Black people are supporting this government. Those new members that we see recently, and even in today's paper, it points to how polarized our society is, but our people are willing to support a racist government. It's a level of consciousness.
Lelon, look, and coming to you, Lincoln, I really don't think the PPP is interested in votes. I think the PPP is parading these few Black people, because they're few, parading them as a means of discouraging, as we say in the community, encouraging also. And a picture tells sometimes more than the story. All we have to do is see 25 Black people, and it done our spirit, because we are saying what is going on here. So the PPP, I think, they're not interested in votes. They can thief 3 seats from GCOM in any election right now with that voters list. So they don't need the Black vote. What they need is the malleable Black person. A community that goes to sleep. A community that is frustrated. That is what they're after. They want to demoralize the Black community, and they're using these people to do it. And that's what I'm saying. When you see people like them on the streets, as the old people used to do, when they see you walk a street and they think you're a nut natal, they must spit. Not spit on you, they must spit. You all are village boys, you all know that. And that's what we have to do with these people. Lincoln Lewis. Lincoln. Yes.
Let me tell you what. Let me tell you something. I believe that you were eavesdropping on a conversation we were having about 3:45 today. We were talking about the setting of alienating some of these people. But I'll tell you more about this thing. There is a bigger, while they want to beat the African community down. They don't want to make them slave, but they want to make them servant.
Yeah.
At the same time, this thing has a bigger plan. Let me tell you, yesterday morning or this morning, I opened the paper and I see the government is negotiating some 100 million settlement, some 100 million story with the parking meter deal that they had in Jartum that went south. If you go back in the records, you will see there are 2 players who came out yesterday, before yesterday, who were embraced by the PPP, who are former members of the city council. One of them signed the contract. That contract never went to the council, but it was signed. This parking meter company, our investigation has shown that the parking meter company as the major player now in the parking is a supporter of the PPP. So when they're telling you that they're coming now, so those two people are going to lead evidence that will cause them to pay that settlement of over 100 million. They already make the deal. All of them will get a drawback in this thing here. They didn't get it when they were on the council. What they're really doing here, this is about big money.
Yeah.
The Georgetown, for instance, the Georgetown City Council elections is about big money. If you remember, and you follow these things every day, the PPP start to clean up Charleston all by itself. And they stop. They now understand what the real estate, sending people there, they have now got an understanding of the level of the real estate in Charleston, Alvystone. A number of those properties are still in the names of people who died. They're going to find, they have a plan now. That to win the city council, they will have a council that is malleable to them. And they will move in and displace people from Charleston, Alvystone. And take up all the real estate in that area. Break down, build over. They have their friends that they intend to do so. And let me tell you, the information I'm getting is from people who fear what will happen. These guys are a bunch of brigands. Those who join with the PPP to now dislodge poor people at their property. We will see anytime they win there, you will see a similar situation. They could transpire and mock up. Is that the type of thing that is, you understand me, that is unfolding here? But our people are too malleable, and we intend on many occasions what we do, we facilitate these transgressions against our own people. It's about this guy today and to hell was tomorrow. The question here is that how we treat with them, you may be right there. It's an idea that we have had and we discussed today. We have to alienate some of these people.
Yes, yes.
We don't have to hurt them.
No.
We have to stay. When they come in, let me tell you, man, come in a bar and offer your beer. We must be of such that we can tell you, no thanks.
No thanks.
We don't want a beer with blood money. Right? We have to talk to our children. We have to talk to our cousins. We got to talk to the men at the street corner, let them understand. David, I like you when you're coming back. Look at the Buxton Middle Walk. Let me talk with them boys there. I've been talking with them. Some of them are conscious of what's taking place. We got to turn them a different way. And you made a point earlier. You know, I was a member of Aspire. And Aspire used to, the quarters was 30 Church Street, Alberta. I remember it well. You had Guyana as Umawali and those guys. They used to come down in communities and talk with people, run schools, run lessons. I remember well, they run in Region 10, they run lessons in Kokwani, Aichuni, and Mackenzie, Wismar. We have to go back to those things to see what interests people and seek to help them and turn them away. You know, Mr. Jagdio said to people, and he used the airwave. He used the communication machinery. He said to people sometimes, don't worry those men. They don't have anything to offer you. Well, you can do. I have the authority to make you get money.
Yeah.
To get a house and a car. But many of them don't realize that when they get the house and they get the car, they don't have no money when they don't pay the mortgage and the loan when the month comes. They got crunch to find food for the children. But he has been able to instill that in them.
Yeah.
He never said to them that he's going to give them, I'm going to make sure that each of you get a 10-acre land. You know, let me tell you something, and this for the viewers. I come from a father who lived in my father was a miner. My mother was a seamstress. Let me tell you something. When my father worked in the mining areas, away from home, one of the things he always do, a piece of land to sell somewhere, his brother or his brother-in-law will call and say, Stephen, this person selling out. How can we buy? And he who have access to the dollar will send that money and to help that brother or brother-in-law or cousin-in-law to help, right, to acquire. And you know what he done? What that did? He kept much of our family land in the family. In the family. That my father and those guys, they are dead and gone. But there are lands there that not his children, but his grandchildren can inherit. We got to start now holding hands in this process here. Doing things differently. We have to learn from what those guys did.
The voice of Lincoln Lewis here on Politics 101. We are discussing the state of the African Guyanese community. And we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the dilemma that the opposition find itself in, whether to participate in the election or not. And if you participate, how you participate. We have two of the opposition parties not participating. One is participating. How do they work themselves out? We'll see. Hear the views of Lincoln Lewis and Lelon Saul when we come back.
If you hear me, black is beautiful. Santa Claus. Black is beautiful. It's a textile. Lift your head like me. You got to wear it for with dignity. How it was now. Black is beautiful. I said, sing it along. Black is beautiful. Say, I'm black and proud. It's my time that we get rid of that old slave mentality.
One race from the same place that make the same trip on the same ship. So we must push one common intention. It's for a better life in the region. For we woman and we children. That must be the ambition of the Caribbean and the Caribbean and the Caribbean.
The Open Word podcast is our new show where we take a little bit different angle on things. The first edition was aired yesterday, and we will do that podcast at 6:30 on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. Welcome back to Politics 101. We have Lelon Saul and Lincoln Lewis here. They are both members of a new organization, the Institute for Action Against Discrimination, and they've been holding public fora to help to sensitize people. Lelon, I mentioned the dilemma that the opposition seemed to find itself in, because it is very clear that the PPP is taking over GCOM and plan to rig elections from GCOM as they did in 2020. But then the PPP seeks to make the election a battleground, not for control of local authorities, because they get the central government, and central government override local authorities every day. But they're using the elections as a battleground for more political space. They already have invaded all the political space at the level of the central government. The parliament, the National Assembly, the executive, they're bullying the courts. And now they're seeking to take the little remaining space that is there at the local level. And the objective always for the PPP is about transforming Guyana into an ethno-state in which the different ethnic groups will be unequal in terms of their living status in the country. So let me get your views on what should the opposition do in the circumstances. The AFC and the WPA have said they're not taking part in the election. The PNC, to my mind, has decided it will take part in order to stop the PPP's total takeover. So we have the three main opposition parties having different approaches to this problem. Can it be resolved? How should it be resolved?
Though, look, I support the opposition taking part in these elections. It is very important in order to avoid total dominance by the PPP. I know that the voters list is not credible, and we need a credible list. But in the absence of a credible list, I think that we need to take part in these elections. We need to participate in these elections. Though Guyana is a unitary state and central government will dominate you anyhow. But once you are there within these local government bodies, there are things that you will be able to prevent. For example, if you're in control of Georgetown, you can stop and you can prevent the disposal of people's properties. Those who are not paying up their taxes on time, maybe perhaps they have some difficulties, or you can adequately represent the vendors. And hence, the reason why I would support the participation of the opposition in this election. But we must continue to fight to ensure that GCOM is restructured and we have, first and foremost, a credible list. If we are going into election, we need a credible list. I would have done some checks on a particular list in the community, and I discovered there are people who died since 2010 that are on the list, and some of those people died overseas, and so you're not able to clean the list. And there are cases where people die right here in Guyana, and their names are on the list. And so we need to put a mechanism in place that will ensure that those who are dead, that they do not vote. Let us not fool ourselves. Election in Guyana, there are a host of problems throughout all the electoral districts. And sometimes we don't want to admit that. You know, the PPP will give the impression, and the PNC, they're riggers and so on. But I have seen rigging take place in the PPP district. I remember in 1997, I was at Crawford Creek. I was there with some Commonwealth observer, and I was looking what is going on, and they didn't understand what was going on. And the people were distributing ID cards right in front of the polling station at Crabwood Creek. People come, there was a gentleman there. Oh, what your name? This is your ID card. Give them an ID card and a slip with a number like on it. I saw that in 1997, And so we need to put system in place to ensure that we prevent such things from happening. If we are going to build a strong democracy, we need those things in place. But I think that
sorry, Lelon. Go ahead.
The opposition should take part in these local government elections. If it's general election and the condition remain the same, I will say do not take part. Don't even go to the poll in a general election with a nasty list. You cannot do that. You must not do that. And I trust by the time we get to 2025, the issue at GCOM will be resolved and so on. And I have a problem with the staffing at GCOM and how things are being done at GCOM. I am not satisfied with what is happening there. And I know a case where I think it's on the East Coast, the East Bank, one of those NDC, where a voluntary group was disqualified. I spoke with the person there, and I am not convinced that that group should have been disqualified. But it's left up to GCOM, and what they're doing. I mean, if we want to assist people to take part in these elections, GCOM should be able to enable the process instead of discouraging people from taking part in the process. I noticed one of your someone on the in the comment section said I should not talk about 1997. Anyhow, Ms. Brown, I am just presenting the facts as I see it. Thank you.
All right, Lincoln. Let me get Lincoln here. Lincoln, are we facing a dilemma, a conundrum in the opposition ranks as far as the elections are concerned? And how can we move forward in what's clearly a difficult development? Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you what. I'm a trade unionist, and I understand something. That nothing is achieved until everything is agreed on. And there are some principles when you dealing in a room. You may be the leader, but leadership is about building. Leadership has an important component in it, that we have to build a team. The opposition, I am sorry you asked me this question, but I have to say it. It is disjointed, and the messages that are coming out are conflicting. I recognize that the AFC said they're not participating. They give a reason why. The WPA said that they're not participating. They give a reason why. But the APNU said they are participating and they are not participating. The message was not clear. But what I'm saying that in the event of non-participation, there wasn't an alternative that was put up to the people. What we are going to do. And I'll tell you this. Over the last maybe about a year and months, the people who are supporters of the opposition believe that the only way you can repel the steamroller of the PDP is by not only through going through the court or believing that you go to parliament, but by putting people outside it. Don't run away from it. When people said to me in 2021 about leadership of the party, I said to them that they will achieve nothing, regardless of who they put there. There were people who said, who felt I was attacking the current leader of the APNU PNC. I wasn't prepared to cooperate with him, but I know the PPP. And we can't send mixed signals to people to tell them that we're going to put them in the street. And when we get to leadership, we turn and say, give excuses for it. In 1997 election, remember we got the Ordmanston Accord, which cut the term of the government by about 2 years. You know what give you that? It was boots on the ground, as the normal man said. The PPP understands nothing more than the issue of confronting them. You don't negotiate with the PPP because they will never honor anything. The responsibility, the state of affairs has to be taken by leaders. And you know, like days ago, somebody talking to about 4 persons a couple of days ago, and they tell me, say, you know, the past president, the past leader of the opposition, they're not cooperating. I'm saying to you, we have to understand something. While they may be past leaders and past presidents, we have to cause them. Whosoever be the leader, got to cause them to be a part of the process, be a part of the team. David, you live in the United States. You were there when Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama lead off. They clashed for the leadership, for the presidential nomination for the Democratic Party. There were bitter struggle. All kind of things happened. People came out against Bill Clinton. There were blood on the carpet. But you know what? When Obama got the nomination, he was able to call Hillary, put his force troops together, sit down, talk with Hillary and all the leaders in the Democratic Party and come up with a united force to dislodge the Republican Party from government. I say this, that we have to work together, but working together requires programs and making deals and concessions among us. We have to do that. That is not being done. And because that is not being done, the opposition finds itself in this current conundrum. You got to understand, the leadership got to take responsibility. And I'm saying again, that while for instance, the WPA, the AFC said they're not going, they gave reasons. But what was absent in that case is a question of what the alternative. I know that I can read, but everybody don't read like me. That the alternative was, let us take extra judicial means and deal with it. Let me tell you something. If a man, I am a US, I will never tell an employer that the issue of strike is off the table. I'll never do it. It weakens my position. To signal to the government that protest is off the table, embolden the government to steamroller my supporters. We have to understand that there are certain tactics, certain things you don't compromise. You don't give up some things. That's what I want to say to you.
Thank you very much, Brother Lincoln. And I think at this time, we need the kind of solidarity at all levels in the rank of the opposition. Many of you have been calling me and writing me about what you consider to be harsh criticisms of the WPA by Brother Mark Benshop. I have not spoken to Brother Mark yet. I've looked at the programs and I do agree. The criticisms were harsh. He was not criticizing the WPA stance of not participating in the election. He was criticizing the WPA and using the same language as the PPP. And I have the great respect for Mark. I go on his program. He comes on my program. We have a good relationship. But many people feel that Mark, to use Brother Norton's language, went a little bit too far. This is not the time for us to be ripping each other apart. People know that on this program, I have zero tolerance for attacks on fellow opposition members. I don't do it. I disagree, and sometimes I may voice that disagreement. Most times I don't voice it because we cannot give comfort. We cannot give comfort to the other side. So, Brother Mark, I'm pleading with you as a big brother. Exercise some judgment, because your own supporters, the people who stay with us here, they're not happy about that stance. Like I said, I have not spoken to Mark. Both I called him, I missed him, he called me. We haven't had a chance to speak. But it is not the kind of spectacle that we need at this time. Our people are taking blows, and we cannot be beaten up on each other. We can state our disagreements. We can, and we must state our disagreements, but attacks are a no-no. So, Brother Mark, listen to your big brother. Cool it, my brother. Brother Lelon, closing thoughts, and then Lincoln.
Okay, I thought, one moment. Yes, I just want to encourage our people to continue the fight against all forms of discrimination. We at IAD will continue to do that. We need to raise the level of consciousness among our people in our community. As I said, I believe that in cases where we find that some of our people, they're willing to accept $5,000 on a plate of food to march down the road with their opponents. And hence, that is why people call them hungry belly and all sort of derogatory name. And they have to be conscious of that. So I'm appealing to them. Let us work together in our community to make our community sustainable. And so you don't have to run to the oppressor and seek comfort there. There's no comfort for you there. We will reach out to people. We will continue to reach out to people across the communities. And we hope that in our engagement to raise their level of consciousness. And that is what is important. Thank you.
Brother Lincoln?
Let me tell you that I'm happy that you've invited us to this program. I hope that you will call us again. We still see your program as a very friendly operation to the downtrodden. IAD is about advancing the rights and the rule of law for all of us, the downtrodden in this society. Well, let me tell you, take this opportunity in closing to say to the citizens of throughout this country, in this local government election, it's time you take back local government is for local people. It's time you take it back. Don't allow governments to come to tell you, your major ruling party. These are rulers, you know. They don't govern. These rulers to come to tell you who must be the lead, who you must elect to office. We must stand against these type of things. And I want to say also, I want to appeal to the opposition leaders and forces. Now more than ever, you need to sit down and examine the path you've traveled, where we are now, and where we intend to, where you can take us in the future. We cannot say a man is not prepared to work with me. I have a greater responsibility as a leader to make sure that I cause people to work with me. If I fail to get people to work with me, then I have abrogated my right to lead. We have to do something. David, thanks for inviting us. And I urge you to seek to help in making this force a better one. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Good night,
comrades. And thank you very much, Lelon. Members of the new organization, the Institute for Action Against Discrimination. They're rolling forums around the country. Whenever they come your way, make sure you turn out. And let us organize and mobilize to ensure our foreparents would be proud of us. Good night, my brothers.
Good night, Doc. And you must get these strolls off.
And to you, our audience, good night. Again, thanks for keeping watch with us another night. We come back tomorrow night. Hopefully, I'll get somebody or buddies from the PNC to come on and to talk about the campaign ahead for the local government elections. We come in peace, we leave in peace, because we're a peaceful people, but we are not and must not be a docile people.